I couldn't. And so I reached out, and I remember the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. The sisters were my beacon. Drag is one thing, and I loved performing. I loved being out there. But you know what? Doing drag for activism and for nonprofit reasons and for community reasons has been the most meaningful than anything else. The moment that I walked into that first meeting of being with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, I knew I was home. They told me, we need to expiate that stigmatic guilt, and let's promulgate that universal joy out of you, because that's what we're about. Recently, you might have heard, there's been a debacle going on about, of course, corporate sponsorships. The Dodgers in LA wanted to honor the LA Sisters with a gift of honoring them for their 27 years of community service. And yet, what happened? It turned into some nasty, evil battle with some god-awful Catholic rhetoric that has been outdated for so many years and was just brought with a bunch of hate and basically labeled us as perverted, sexual, anti-Catholic hate group members. I don't know if any of those words, they do not represent me. And I know they don't represent the sisters. Never once have we been any of that. Now you want to say, okay, but you dress, the way you dress is a mockery of nuns. It is not. We are a representation of our community. Our community dresses like this. So we reflect our community as well as they reflect their community, which should be fine. I'm not going into the church like this, going around trying to push my rhetoric onto them, but they sure as hell want to come into our spaces and try to oppress us with theirs. That's not right. But you know what? The biggest thing is that I have ever seen is the support within community, and I'm so forever grateful. If anything you guys don't do today, just reach out to someone you don't know. When you see someone walking on the street, smile. Even though we need to get to work, we need to get to things. We're New Yorkers, we gotta get by. But you know what? A smile goes a long way for some people. You never know what they're going through themselves. So if you lead with love, you will always receive love. And that's what my voice and my message is from here on out and today. So I'm very grateful again, and thank you again for everyone to invite me. I appreciate you. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, if you wanted to make a donation with Wes over here in the card machine, if you could just put your card in the air and he can find you, that would be lovely. And now, Ryan, I know you wanted to say something really quick before we move on to the next storyteller. Yeah. Or do you want to introduce them?
Yeah, before we introduce my longtime friend, Randy, it's not as long for me as some of you, but we'll get to you in a second. First of all, I just want to say, sister, thank you for giving us that vulnerable, deep story, and for kicking ass. Let me just say, Sister Mary is like, okay, yeah, this Dodgers thing happens. I'm getting to work. Like, sister really gets to work, and I always say this to the sisters, but today it means like strangely different. Thank you for perpetually indulging us, always. Well, and Sammy, thank you for acting as a guard. And they're a fantastic organization, and you all should look at them. Speaking of looking at, okay, so I brought up August. August here is, August and I go to the same gym. It's not the YMCA, it is the temple. TMPL. Okay. Hey, listen, NYU paid for 2 hours and we're ahead of time, so I'm gonna take a second. And really quick, if you like this sort of work, connecting with queer history, August has an event that's coming up at the Housing Works bookstore. I brought him to show off while I talk. This is history, how gay liberation front created the new worlds. His mentor is also here, Michaela Griffo. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, sure. Well, this has been great, everyone. I think things like this are crucial and needed at a time like this. But this Sunday we'll be hosting an intergenerational panel. Michaela Griffo is actually here, and it goes back to a time that we were talking about earlier where gay activists were fighting back for the first time. Blood, billy clubs, out of the closet into the streets. And, you know, just to speak to some of the breadth that different people have done, the Gay Liberation Front would host all-women dances to try to get the scene away from the mafia. They put a gun to Michaela's head, and she told them off in Sicilian so they would leave the dance. So we need to bring that spirit back. And 126 Crosby Street, 230 Housing Works Bookstore. I have some flyers as well. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, I love to see the intergenerational outreach, reaching out to each other. We have to learn from these people because we don't want history to repeat itself, right? We can't let that happen again. We gotta learn, okay? So now I think it's time to bring our final storyteller to the stage. So listen, we are standing here at Stonewall, and for many of us, we think about the gay rights movement. We think of this place of the riots in 1969, and that was a starting point. But that was not the beginning. A very few people were putting themselves out there onto the front lines even before that. And we are so very lucky to get to hear from one of those original...
We need some IATSE in here, so just give us a minute while we set up.
I'm really not. It's a miracle. I'm really not prepared. I've been working on a speech for 2 weeks, hundreds of hours. It should have been a book. And I only have a few minutes, but I'll do my best.
You'll be great.
Take your time.
All right, so remember, just say next slide and bring up the picture. Okay. And tell me when you want first slide.
Okay.
Okay, give it up for Randy, everyone.
I wrote these as notes. They didn't have to put them here, but anyway. Oh dear. My name is Randolfe Hayden Wicker. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland on February the 3rd, 1938. And my given name was Charles Gervin Hayden Jr. My most significant accomplishments in the gay movement actually all took place before I reached the age of 30. That means before Stonewall. I joined the Mattachine Society in 1958 at the age of 20. At the age of 20, I had to lie and say I was 21 because that was the legal age for joining. Perhaps you have read either John D'Amelio's book, he called me the first gay militant. Eric Cervini, in his latest book, the Deviant versus the USA of America, used me as the foil who all during the early 60s was provoking the existing gay movement, Mattachine movement, to start taking to the airways and starting public agitation. They didn't think they should do that until they had the approval of the psychiatrists. So if we hadn't really started before that, we might still be waiting for the approval of the psychiatrists. I'm the last spokesman for the pre-Stonewall movement, standing and still fighting, and I'm not finished yet. But before I begin, there's something that I really realized that I really want to say. I brought with me my handy homemade wheelchair. It was made by my friend who was a retired bank robber and legal representative from the Dog Day Afternoon fellow. And he built this wheelchair out of just a folding chair so he could take his lightweight Alzheimer's mother, that's not her right now, So he could take her, you know, wherever. And what's incredible about this, the reason I'm telling you this, is I have taken care of a number of people, and one of whom was Don Teal, who wrote the first book on the gay movement in 1972, filled with information and details, but not all that readable. And for the last 2 years of his life, he wanted to die at home, and I ended up volunteering. I took him home, and I had to go up there every week to hold him up in his shower so he could bathe. And for 2 years, he and other people I have known have let themselves be prisoners in their apartments where they won't go out on the streets or to the parks or by the river or even to a gay Pride Day parade because they are too vain. They don't want to be seen by anyone in a wheelchair. This wheelchair I have used in the Gay Pride Parade for about the last 6 or 7 years because frankly, I'm not up to marching 35 or 40 blocks, whatever the length is. I'd be dropping. Last time I did it, really, by the time I reached the end of the parade, I couldn't make it to the streets there 3 blocks north. So my message to all of you is really, don't let yourself be a prisoner of your silly vanity and your old age, and encourage people that you know in wheelchairs, volunteer. I'm sure there are people that will push them, that they too can provide in gay pride or many other things if they just will not stop being self-imprisoned by their own vanity in apartments. That was just added. That was just added today as I climbed into my wheelchair. I said, my major accomplishments of the gay movement were all done, as I said before, I was 30 years old. They mainly were, I was the first person to break on the radio in 1962. I was the first person to publicly demonstrate for gay civil rights in 1964 with organized a demonstration which included both gay members of Mattachine and members of the Sex Freedom League at the Military Induction Center down on Whitehall Street. I was the first homosexual to go on the air and deal with live questions phoned in by viewers, some of which were kind of heavy and hot to handle. I became very proficient at this, and you can see me if you put in YouTube, Gay Activist 1972. And my video pops up from Pittsburgh, but it's from 1972. Someone told me it was listed as the first appearance, but it wasn't. And you can see that, you know, there's an art in answering questions when it comes to making public appearances. I had started doing that in the early 1960s. I would go over and talk to groups and everything else. As a matter of fact, one of the first, I love in the New York Times Index, they covered a speech I gave at City College uptown, which drew 300 students. And the description of the speech was, Randolfe Wicker calls for acceptance of homosexuals as a legitimate minority group. We were not considered a legitimate minority group in those days. So people sometimes ask me, oh, by the way, when it comes to the Julius Bar, I listed, I forgot the last important thing, is that I was a participant in the sit-in on April 21, 1966 at Julius's Bar. There's a picture of me up there on this side, the Christopherson side of the 7th Avenue fence. I'm the one at the end of I'm the cutie at the end of the bar. I don't know that I really like it when people say, Randy, you were really cute in those days. So anyway, I'm supposed to give a quick thumbnail. Why was I so different from other people? And I'm supposed to explain to you why it was that I grew up to be the kind of crazy, wild individualist that I have been. Well, it all began with having a very strange childhood. Until the age of 12, I lived with a stone-deaf grandmother, and she had not one friend, because she was stone-deaf and didn't know sign language or anything, and therefore I had no contacts with other children my own age. At the age, they sent me to nursery school very early because I had no socialization, and the nuns sent home a report card saying that I didn't socialize well, which I don't think I still do that well, and that they should get me a dog. That poor little Cocker Spaniel, I'd put her on my tricycle handlebars and throw her down let her roll down the steepest hills. And it didn't do any good. When I went to the first grade, because I'm a child, I'm there and they're anxious to get me out into life, right? And also, they sent me early. I started the first grade at the age of 5. This made me the youngest and smallest person in the first grade. And as a result, everybody picked on me. Well, my grandma told me first, she said that they pick on you because they know you're superior, which is a thing you should tell somebody when they're picked on. It keeps them from developing a negative self-image. Then at school, I learned Jesus said, turn the other cheek. I found they just hit you twice as hard. Grandma said, if they're bigger than you are, pick up a rock or a stick to even the playing field. Jesus was wrong, Grandma was right. At the age of 12, I was taken by my parents. My mother had tuberculosis for 7 years, to Florida, to a little tiny phosphate mining town in Central Florida, which in Central Florida is really, in those days, and maybe not as much, nearly as much today, was more like the state of Georgia. I mean, we were poor. I came from a very poor family. My father was just an accountant. He didn't even get a CPA. So he was an accountant there in this company-owned town, and we lived in houses that were little wooden houses built on pillars of red brick and heated by pot-bellied stoves that burned pine knots that had a lot of resin in them. You'd have to get a good pine knot for it to really burn brightly and heat your house in winter. But we did have indoor toilets. We actually had plumbing, which is more than we can say for the other part of Company Town, which was only about 500 or 700 people. On the other side of the tracks where all the African American people unfortunately lived. Well, it was really interesting because when we drove out on the highway, you would see Klansmen wearing their hoods, going to rallies at the local drive-in. And on top of that, I was told by my parents, it was never tell anyone that your mother beat TB, tuberculosis, and don't let anyone know that we're Roman Catholics. Of course, that was the first thing. I was likely to tell anyone after that. I was never intimidated or some prejudice. I think I forgot to mention, among the charming things about where we lived in Central Florida, it was a dry county, and everybody, including my family, made their beer in the bathtub.
Wow.
So what happened was that my father was ultimately promoted to New York City, a much better job, which meant that, unbelievably, it was a big enough promotion that they would be able to send me to college, which in those days was not hugely expensive like it is today. And I could become the first college-educated person in my family ever. And this was really unique, and that's something to get back to. The days that poor people can afford to go to college and not end up being re-enslaved by student debt for the rest of their life. So my first year in college, I wrote a diary. I knew I was gay since I was, came to puberty. And I knew by reading books, that I knew by just listening. And I was one of those people other people call queers. And for some reason, they really didn't mistreat me because somehow my father had told me, you hold your books like this, or not like this, So I had learned to sort of pass, so to speak. So I was not ever really harassed like some people are for being, outrageous or faggoty or something as a child. But when I was in college, the only homosexuals, no one knew any homosexuals in those days. There was not one public homosexual spokesman or celebrity. There was only stories about Burgess and Menin, who were commies that ran off to Russia, betrayed the United States, or Leopold Loeb, the thrill killers that had killed a little child. And of course, in Florida, there was the Johns Committee when I was in high school that was running up and down seeking out homosexuals at the local university, commies and homosexuals. It's always had 2 or 3 people that are victims together, and unfortunately escaped all that. So I wrote in my diary, this is sort of an diary, I think it's very funny, that in my diary I said, I really just dream. I have this dream. One day I will meet one other homosexual. Dreams do come true. So anyway, Daddy found my diary and read it too, which I had it in a locked box, but parents don't trust your parents. They'll break open your locked boxes and read your diary. And he confronted me. And he said he fortunately had gone to a psychiatrist who told him, your son will always be this way. And he said to me, I read your diary and I know why you're gay, because when you were a very little kid, 4 or 5 years old, you came into the bathroom crying, Daddy, why did Mommy go out and leave me? She had been taken away to a tuberculosis sanitarium the night before. Of course, that's not the reason I'm gay, but it gave my father the possibility of understanding. And he told me, he said, I know you'll always be this way because the psychiatrist told me so. He said, I just want you to know that I want to do everything I can to see that you are the best adjusted homosexual you can be, because I won't be here always to protect you. So I tell you today that I stand here proudly on the strong, loving shoulders of my father. And I hope, I just so much hope that the advances we made in the last 65 years have made it possible there are many, many more people that have parents like him. In '58, I showed him magazine literature. I discovered gay life in New York and discovered there was actually an organized gay movement called Mattachine. I think I mentioned I became the 16th member of the Mattachine Society, very small. For those of you who don't know, Mattachine was a society for gay rights founded by Harry Hay in 1950. Before Stonewall, people don't realize it was literally 20 years of activism. It had several little different groups, but the total people involved were only a couple hundred. So I took my father and I showed him the Mattachine literature because, I thought he'd be, interested or excited. And he read it. And first he said, I would love to, if she lived long enough for me to bring him to see today. He said to me, I don't think you're going to get very far with this. Even I am amazed how far we've gotten. But then he paused and kind of almost reluctantly said, son, I love you. Just do me one favor, will you? Please don't involve my good name. So here was Charles Gervin Hayden Jr., Sr., asking Charles Gervin Hayden Jr. not to use our shared name. And that was the day that Randy Wicker was born. And it just happened to be in June 1958, which Pride Month, and that was 12 years before the first Pride even existed.
Wow.
So today, I stand before you as a 65-year-old Randy Wicker, trapped in an 85-year-old Charlie Hayden body. No, not yet. Okay, yeah. So when I joined Mattachine, they called me the young Macavar from the West, because I was at the University of Texas. This is the famous, in Austin.
Yes.
This is the famous Texas Tower in the background, where I was nearly elected president of the student body in 1960. And the deans called me in and said, we can't have a homosexual being a public representative of the student body. And fortunately, I missed by 30 votes out of I think about the student body of 17,000, but I missed by only 30 votes, which was a relief to me, because what I had discovered was that at those days, you could not become a politician and have any chance of succeeding, because in those days, homosexuals were just all considered to be mental cases, criminals, child molesters, communists. You pick the title, it was thrown at us. So anyway, when I joined Mattachine in 1962, in those days, because you didn't have any gay celebrities, there was, the only people you read about as homosexuals were in my case histories from 1870, when some music teacher seduced a student. So when I discovered, since the diagnostic manuals of all psychiatry, the consensus was that homosexuality itself was defined as a mental illness. But psychiatrists are in the business of curing mental illness. And you would have all these books and these people on radio and television saying they could save your gay son or daughter with just 6 sessions at God knows how much per session. Of course, no refunds if they failed. They just needed more sessions. I heard a program something like this on WBAI FM here in New York City. And I, frankly, was outraged. I went up to WBAI and I said, why in the world did you have a program with all these psychiatrists saying you're really facilitating fraud, having all these psychiatrists promising cures for so much per session, and if it doesn't work, you just need more sessions. That's really fraud. Why? We homosexuals, the real thing was that we homosexuals were and are the authorities on our own lives and on homosexuality. No one else. So what happened is BAI said, well, get a panel of homosexuals together and, we'll do an interview. And I did. I got 6 or 7 friends together up in the Upper West Side. I had a interracial couple, a bisexual. My Puerto Rican friend failed to show up, and a couple others. And they taped an hour-and-a-half interview, and it was announced in the WBAI monthly program. Yes, in those days they had print monthly programs. They didn't have the internet. And of course, in those also, any homosexual in those days who opened his mouth for anything other than sex, caused public hysteria. And right now, the big one, what happened was that this is a cleaned up copy without Jack O'Brien's picture, but I'll just share it with you. It gives you a feeling for what it was like in those days. It said, July 9th, 1962. You ever heard of silly situations at broadcasting? But FM station WBAI wins our top prize for scraping this sickly barrel bottom. WBAI announces a bit proudly it will give 8 young homosexuals equal time to tell their perverted side of the admittedly sad and certainly sinful story, because WBAI believes the rights of minorities to be heard. This lower depths decision followed the approach to the station's bubble-headed brass of a fellow bearing the card, Public Relations Director of the Homosexual League of America. It wasn't that pompous, it was the Homosexual League of New York. Is that a union? No, it wasn't. This arrogant, card-carrying swish claimed WBAI in a previous panel discussion of the homosexual in America had been unfair and it did not give the opinion of homosexuals. Show them the card-carrying swish picture. Now, this is from my TV appearances, which is the first TV appearance on television. So I wanted you to know what a card-carrying swish looked like. Because I always wore a suit and tie, black suit and tie, and as you can see here, I look absolutely disgraceful, right? So anyway, I took this raving, I have to finish it. It gets better. It says, this 8-man or something panel, this man or something, friends have called me Miss Thing several times in my life, but no one has ever called me Miss Something. We'll discuss their homosexuals' feeling towards promiscuity, domestic life, police harassment, politics, social responsibility, careers, the difficulty and ease of living in New York, the dullness of straight society, and the reason that homosexual relations are so transitory. Yipes changed those call letters to WSICK. Now, I don't know if you realize it, but in those days, this was the greatest piece of PR and I could ever have dreamed of receiving, because I took this news item and went up to the New York Times, where I walked in as a little old man in a suit and tie at the desk, and I hand him my card, and he looks at the card, and first he looks up at me and says, does this card really mean what it says? Of course, it said Public Relations Director, Homosexual League of New York. And I said, of course, what else would it say? And so he picks up the phone and he tells somebody, he says, there's a gentleman calling here who says he is the Public Relations Director of the Homosexual League of New York, and he wants to talk to you. Well, I tell you, within 30 seconds, there was a reporter coming out of the newsroom, and in those days, which was really strange, reporters took you in a closet about the size of a confessional in a Catholic church, but without the dividers. And I did the same routine at every publication, every magazine, every newspaper, every radio and TV station. And what happened was it became, when it was finally broadcast, we got 2 articles in the New York Times, a rave review by Jack Gould, who was a famous columnist, reviewer of media. I got stories in Newsweek, a whole page in Newsweek called Minority Listening. And it was really laid the groundwork. So also, the most important thing about all of this publicity was that a bunch of very devout, good Christians challenged the broadcasting license of WBAI. Because after all, let's face it, they had put perverts on the air. And that was appealed to the Federal Communications Commission, which was the licensing authority of every radio and TV station in the nation. And the Federal Communications Authority ruled that homosexuality was a legitimate subject for discussion on the airwaves. We had achieved our voice, and for the next 2 years or more, every TV station, every radio station wanted a homosexual spokesman. The trouble was that the other members of management who were knowledgeable and could be very articulate didn't dare go on radio or TV because they might be identified by their voice and lose their jobs. So I was young and wild and free, no college debt, I was the one that went. And that is why meanwhile, I found out later that people on the West Coast were sending letters to all these people saying, you shouldn't be putting this Randy Wicker on the air speaking for homosexuals. He has no authority. Because these are the people from One Magazine and the small gay organizations who felt that I was a wild card, and that was sort of like my biggest achievement in the gay movement. Now, I now reach a point, I need the yellow thing. This year, I've had the honor of being chosen as the social justice warrior of the Heritage of Pride Parade. So I'm really honored by this, but this really means is that I have a platform. I guess I should say my supposed 15 minutes of fame has come around again. If you live long enough, maybe that sometimes happens. And I wanted to talk about, that's Andy Hum, who, by the way, you should listen to his program on YouTube every week. He gives you all the news in 1 hour. He and Ann Northrop, the real founders of journalism in this city. Gay USA, right. I'm a thank you. I'm so busy listening to them, I don't notice the title of the program. By the way, also on YouTube, what I failed to add is later in life, I went on to take in Marsha P. Johnson to live with me for the last decade of her life. And Sylvia Rivera and I became great friends after years of being enemies, as I became enlightened about trans people. And she worked in my store as a manager, and in my store, she actually worked and organized all the little isolated trans communities from all different cities and brought them together in the first march for transgender rights ever down to Foley Square. And that after that, fortunately, she stopped using drugs and also stopped using alcohol. She was an incredible, fierce advocate And I'm so glad that by year 2000, they had the year of the millennial pride in Italy, and she was officially hailed as the mother of the transgender movement of the world. So here we are today. Now, today is June the 2nd. People don't realize it, but today is the 99th anniversary of the passage by the U.S. Congress of the Indian Citizenship Act in 1924. And this gave Native Americans the right to vote. And yet we stand here today. They say all politics are local, so I'll get as local as I can and point out to you that we stand here today in Stonewall National Park, and there's Stonewall Bar. And 1 block away we have Julius's, which has now become a nationally recognized historic landmark, and they've made gay bars legal. But unfortunately, we have a statue behind me that is of General Sheridan. Now, one thing that some of you may not know, I hope I remembered to say LGBTQIA2S. That's the full list of letters that I intended to say earlier, but I had forgotten. But 2S stands for Two-Spirit. And that's because many American tribes consider gender nonconforming people to be two-spirit people, which was really one female, one male. And they often turned them into shamans. And they were considered kind of people with special insights and special powers. But the General Philip Sheridan behind us, this statue was put here in 1936, only because it was actually a sort of a battle between cities in the South who were erecting monuments to, Jim Crow era monuments to the Confederacy, and so the cities in the North, including here, even my hometown of Hoboken, were erecting monuments to heroes that fought against slavery on the right side in the Civil War, and that's how they ended up creating General Sheridan and putting him here in Stonewall Park. He really is a military hero for fighting on the right side in the Civil War against slavery. But the but was that he committed genocide against Native Americans all over the plains, whom he called savages. He couldn't defeat Native Americans on the plains because they could ride in on horses. He was marching in military formation, and he literally couldn't handle fighting them on their own terms. So what he did is decided he started decided the only way to defeat them and force them to live on reservations was to deny them a food source by virtually exterminating the American bison. His most famous, the most famous statement allegedly attributed to him is, "The only good Indian is a dead Indian." He famously declared in 1874, because after the plains were still having herds of Indians, after professional hunters trespassing on Indian land had killed 4 million buffalo, he said, "Let them kill, skin, and sell until the buffalo is exterminated." And ironically, you know how politics are so messy? Later on, when there were only 500 left, they sent him to Yellowstone to rescue the last 500 existing buffalo. So this man does not deserve to be in our park. He really deserves to be like Teddy Roosevelt. They took away because of his demeaning attitudes toward Native Americans and also African Americans. Relocated. This man needs to be relocated either to Grant's Tomb or a Civil War battlefield, somewhere where he might rightfully stand, but not in the heart of Stonewall National Monument. And we have started a petition on change.org, which you read in detail if you copy the square in the middle. And we intend to start promoting that starting today, because we want him out of here within 1 year before the 100th anniversary, giving Native Americans the right to vote. That we want this community to be known for love and equality. Someday maybe they'll even change this subway stop name, change it to Equality Square. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we all learned a lot today, right? Make some more fucking noise. Make some loud noise for Randy Wicker! Oh my goodness, wow. Are y'all feeling activated? Are y'all ready? Are y'all radicalized? Are you ready to fucking march? Listen, I'm ready to make a difference. I hope you are. We're ready to be the change that we want to see in this world, right? Let's have one more round of applause for all of our amazing storytellers. Please stand, storytellers. Thank you so much for your stories today. We appreciate you. I want to thank you all again for being here. I want to go ahead and invite you to plug your emails in our contact page at thegenerationsproject.org if we don't have it already, so we can keep you up to date with other shows and programs. Please give us a follow on Instagram at The Generations Project. And while you're at it, go ahead and follow me at Castrata NYC. We do have another show for you this month on the High Line on June 29th at 5 o'clock. We're going to be sharing stories of transformation, and I will also be hosting and singing as well. So I hope to see you there. And now the stories are over, but I was hoping that I could sing one more song for you. Is that okay? Amazing. Well, listen, this song is very important. This is an iconic song that was actually written and sung by someone who did not come out as lesbian until later in her life. Her name, sorry, I just had to get that mic off. Her name was Leslie Gore, and this is one of my favorite songs that I sing. This is an iconic classic song, and I wanted to take a more contemporary spin on it, so I hope you enjoy it. Ryan, stick it in. Oh, and raise it more than that, baby. More. There you go. You don't own me. I'm not just one of your many toys. You don't own me. Don't say I can't go with other boys. And don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to say. And please, when I go out with you, don't put me on display, 'cause you don't own me. Don't try to change me in any way. You don't own me. Don't tie me down, 'cause I'll never stay. I don't tell you what to say, and I don't tell you what to do. So just let me be myself. That's all I ask of you. I'm young, and I love to be young. I'm free, and I've got to be free to live my life the way that I want, to say and do whatever I please. So, Miss Brown, I want to remind you that we are stronger together as a community, right? We are are one of the best communities in this planet. I have never met a community better than this one right here, right now. And don't tell me what to do, and don't tell me what to say. And please, when I go out with you, don't put me on display. I don't tell you what to say. I don't tell you what to do. So just let me be myself. That's all I ask of you. You don't know me, no, no. You don't know me, no. You don't know me. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here and to be a part of this amazing community. Thank you so fucking much. I think that was it. That was the end of the show. Thank you so much. We hope to see you at our next event on the 29th. Happy Pride, New York City! And I was saying, let the music play, but I don't know if there's music. So everyone, have a blast. I'm coming.
Okay. Guys, come in a little closer. Okay, over here first. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. More. Come in a little closer.
Yeah, closer, because it's like...
Okay, everyone say pride on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, we need more. Let's get more.
Wait, one more.
Jackie has to get a picture.
Stay there.
Take a...
Got it. Thank you.
One more.
Don't move.
One more.
Can you take me?
Get pushed.
Hold it. One more. Michelle, more. Thank you.
Can you do me a favor? Wait, don't move. Don't move. Can you take me a picture? Just touch it because I'm still recording. Just touch it.
One more.
One. Ready? 1, 2. I think in the back. Yeah, there we go. Ready? One more. Oh, there we go. Cheese. Okay. Okay. I think it's still going, right? But I'm taking pics, yeah. Yes, okay.
Where's Tom? All generations public story.
Let's do it. Generation. Hell yeah. Yes, girl. Let's do it. Thanks, honey.
Okay, my feet are killing me. My feet are killing me.
Video?
What do you need for me to say? Happy Pride. Thank you for coming out today with the Generation Project. And as the years go by, as we continue to age, those of us in the LGBTQIA community, we need to show up. We need to represent. Love you guys all. Happy Pride. Done.
How are you? And tell me why you're here and summarize, because I know you did more than over there, so summarize the history. When you spoke at the event yesterday.
Yeah. I'm here today on June 2nd for the Generations Project Radical Queer Storytelling to honor Pride. I told my story of activism back in 1971 when I was president of the Gay Liberation Front, because when we sued the university, We didn't get the funding, but we did eventually get recognition. So I was part of what started. That was 2 years after Stonewall. The Lawrence Gay Liberation Front patterned themselves after the New York City Gay Liberation Front. So that was in New York. I was in Lawrence, Kansas, but I'm still here 50 years later.
So what year the Stonewall started?
1969.
So
And I was in Chile in 1969 when I was with a demonstration in Chile. And when I came back to New York in 1970, I was part of a demonstration against the Vietnam War. But in 1971, which when I was the president, we sued the university.
okay.
So we're all part of that.
And thank you for fighting for the causes, including homelessness, HIV/AIDS, and you can see my shirt.
Yes, absolutely.
HIV/AIDS.
Yes. All right.
And thank you for yesterday.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Today was amazing.
Okay, so go ahead.
I'm here at the National Park and celebration of Stonewall and just listen to the Generation Project speakers. And every single one of those speakers was amazing. And I learned a tremendous amount about myself and about other people. And I'm proud to be here today.
Thank you. Can you summarize what you spoke yesterday?
What I spoke about growing up and being a person of two spirits. That's what I spoke about yesterday.
So you mean gender non-conforming?
Right, gender non-conforming.
I feel like I'm that way too.
I think a lot of people are. But you know, we learn.
I don't care
to
if
be-
people call me. I don't
we
care if
learn
people.
to be one or the other or something. You know.
I don't care if people call me gay, transvestite because I'm transvestite, gender conforming, transgender. All titles don't matter to me. To me, I talk about me, not nobody else, because everybody thinks different. But thank you for allowing me to be, so I can post this into YouTube. I'm trying to find out who else spoke.
Say something. I want to say Happy Christopher Street Liberation Month. That's the name of it. That's how it started back in 1970, 1 year after Stonewall.
What is your channel?
Christopher Street Liberation Day was the original name for Pride Day. Christopher Street Liberation Day. It was that way for many years. And then they changed it to Heritage of Pride. But it is Christopher Street Liberation Day. And, you know, we in the Reclaim Pride Coalition have reclaimed Pride, and we'll have a queer liberation march on the same day, the last Sunday of June, 2 o'clock, meet at Foley Square.
Thank you. This is the Stonewall where everything happens. 1969. Channels are here interviewing people of power, the power that be. Okay, look at that. Beautiful. Let me.
I don't want to do any interviews on camera because I'm in the off the.
This is Christopher Park. And we're listening to the music of Miss RuPaul.